Hey, Jan, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here.
Hi, Michael. Thanks for having me.
So where are you calling me in from? It looks very minimalistic in the background.
That's Swiss design.
Swiss design, the best of Swiss design. So you're in Switzerland at the moment.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so it must be quite late for you.
Well, it's okay. It's 9 p.m. here. So
9 p.m. Well, you're doing an interview at 9 p.m. That's the real commitment to the cause.
Yes. I love to have the conversation with whoever is willing to have it at any time.
So there's many things we can talk about, but I'm going to get straight into a new book that you wrote. Mm-hmm. You obviously have a very distinguished career, and we can talk about many things there. So, as you probably know, I'm a former strategy consulting partner at one of the big firms. And my network is investment bankers, private equity people, management consultants, CEOs, and so on. And one of the discussions I always have with them is that we will be talking about anything. We'll be talking about a problem they have in their business. And they'll be telling me something like, Michael, we had to shut down an oil refinery today. And it's a very difficult day. And I always point out to them, in all of this discussion we're having, why don't you talk about the love you have for your customers? When I speak to young consultants and I look at what they're writing on Reddit and so on, they always talk about how hard the work is. They're working until 2 p.m. They're doing slides. But no one talks about that joy when you make a customer happy, when you connect with them. Someone gave me a book and said, hey, Michael, you always talk about this love for customers. Here's a book that's basically the same thing. And I was reading it, and what struck me was you actually talk about the same thing, and very few people talk about it. So what I want to know is, where did this come from? Because it's so obvious that you need it, but it's gotten lost over time.
Oh, Michael, I couldn't agree more with you. So where it came from for me is that I was, let's start late. Okay. So I was in medical training and went through the hoops. And this is, as everybody knows, this is a pretty kind of tough course of studies. And then you go into another 5-6 years of being a resident and learning all the things in real life.
Yeah.
And then I went through kind of a classic medical career. Okay, so I became a professor, and then I was advising, and I was doing research, and working with the World Health Organization and CDC and NIH. So with really interesting organizations, fantastic people doing really interesting things, and I enjoyed that. And at the same time, increasingly, I realized how something is missing, and I realized how my entire focus was on problems. And then very late, I understood that this is how our brain works. It is a machine that is designed, it's not a machine, but it's a device that is designed to solve problems. It's discerning. That's the real power of our cognitive capacity. And so problems are like the fuel for our mind and for our brains, right? So we're naturally attracted to that. Like bad memories stick. That's a good idea for survival, right? So you don't do the same nonsense again, right? So that's a really good idea, but it's really a survival level of living. And if we want to thrive beyond survival, if we want to actually enjoy, and if we want to really fully savor what life has on offer, then there's a way to go beyond that. And that means to actually give attention to what gives us joy, what really fulfills. And I don't mean satisfaction like, oh, this is a savory taste or this is a lovely smell. That's also nice sensory impressions, but really deep, heartfelt joy. Fulfillment, what you described about the customers, right? Where isn't it exactly these moments that really make it worth doing the thing that we do? Is because we feel like, whoa, this was a great connection. This was a great day that we actually accomplished something together. And it wasn't a fight. It wasn't about winning. It wasn't about any of that, right? Or with patients. The same thing is, it isn't about, I'm the doctor, I have the solution, and you're the patient, and you have the problem, right? So how can we actually move beyond that and create an environment where we feel that we actually live our life's purpose, our life's mission, and every day feels like worth living? And I agree with you. There's so much in parallel between medicine and any kind of consultation, any kind of leadership, any kind of, whenever we feel responsible for clients, for our teams, isn't that actually what we want to live up to?
And when you wrote out these letters to your goddaughter,
Yeah.
these were actual letters you wrote to her.
Yeah. So these were.
She's a very lucky goddaughter. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. So they were like delivered to her as a package, because I was actually trying to come to terms. I realized how deeply conditioned I was. And so while I was writing this, and together with the co-author Arjuna Arda, who was my coach and who actually helped me to look at things in a different kind of way, this was really helpful. And as I was kind of reviewing what I'm actually doing and reflecting on how much I'm focused on problems and how much I'm living in emergency mode and how much I'm living on sleep deprivation and poor nutrition and even feeling quite heroic about it, kind of what a martyrdom as a doctor. It's ridiculous, right? So I actually had not a very good understanding about what it means to really give attention to health and so on a fundamental level, I guess I wasn't really credible for my patients, because if I'm not taking my medicine, then that doesn't really make sense. And I guess it's similar to leadership. Isn't that your experience as well?
Yeah, you used a good word here. You used the word credibility. In leadership, we use the word authenticity in management. Yes. It's the same thing. But what you said is very true here. Typically, when in consulting, anyway, I'm sure you have the same experience in medicine. When you meet a client like a CEO, initially you are there to solve a problem for them. Mm-hmm. That's why they call you up. Mm-hmm. But over time, as you develop a relationship with them, you're not solving a problem for them. You're generally counseling them in their life. Mm-hmm. And what I find is if you're not credible, you don't build a relationship. After time, they will see through you. They will know that you are just saying certain things, you're doing certain things, but it's not who you are. So the authenticity part, the credibility part, I find in the long term, it's the only way to have a sustainable relationship with people. Otherwise, it all falls apart. But beyond that, when you meet a service provider for the first time, whether it's a doctor, a lawyer, or so on. I mean, I don't know how you make decisions, but I'm not going to hire the person who has the biggest resume from the best schools if they have no empathy towards me. Yeah. And that's what I really liked about your writing style. It's about servant leadership. Mm-hmm. It's basically about leadership. I mean, all those letters you wrote to your daughter is about leadership. It's what leadership is, right?
Mm-hmm. It's interesting you read it like that. Yeah.
I read it as a leadership, because the way I thought about it is I thought, what kind of woman will this child be when she grows up if this is the operating system? Because you basically gave an operating system in her mind for the way she needs to think about problems. And I thought, wow, I would want to be led by someone who's following these rules in life. So for me, it was a leadership book. I saw it purely as a leadership book. And that's why people gave it to me. They said, this is a great book on leadership.
Oh, interesting.
You never saw it as a leadership book, but that's how I saw it. And in fact, it's one of the books I'll be recommending to people to read, because we always recommend books that we find. I thought, wow, this is a great leadership book. This is how leaders need to think. It's not about money. It's not about profits. It's not about all those fancy things. It's about caring. Do you care enough to do this? And do you take care of yourself so you can care for people? Because many people don't take care of themselves. They suffer from burnout at the age of 35. But they don't realize they have a gift to give the world, but they can't give it because they burned out by 35, right? It's just a bad way to run your life.
It's so true. And it's interesting you're saying this, that I'm reflecting on, I'd love to hear more about what you perceive as is really helpful for leadership here. What I realized is that my wife was working in Zurich at the university, and I worked in the university hospital in Basel. And so at some point we have 3 children, twins, and a third one. And we decided, this kind of, moving back and forth between cities is kind of strenuous. And so why don't we just start a little practice? And so my wife started a practice, and I said, I know a little bit about, how to start a business. And so I can help you with this. And then gradually it went, and it continued and continued. We felt maybe 2 or 3 physicians. And And we said there's one thing that we want to follow, and that's really being heart-based and really make sure that people know that they're cared for. And this is all we've done. And ever since, people have asked us, like we hardly looked for collaborators, for partners, for team members. People have said like, oh, this sounds like so cool what you're doing. And can I be part of the team? And patients were signing up. And so now it's incredibly successful and going way beyond our expectations. And all is that we've never looked at the bottom line, right? As in like we want to increase the bottom line or work for shareholder value, which we don't even have, right? But something like that. Right? It was just looking at what is it that our clients, our patients are looking for, and how can we best serve them? And that worked a treat.
Yes, what you say makes perfect sense, because whenever you're building anything, you don't set out a goal to make 10%, 20% more profit or revenue per year. No, what you should do is say, how do I best delight my customers? And profits would be a byproduct of that. It's the byproduct, right? You don't have to worry about it. If you take care of your customers and you operate with some common sense, you're going to do well. You asked me about where are the principles in leadership in the book. To me, the whole book is about leadership. And I'll tell you why. Because what happens when we train leaders today, I speak to leaders all over the world every day, is we teach them technical skills.
Yes.
We teach them how to transform a bank, how to right-size a business. We teach them a lot of technical skills. And at the same time, we also reward them for getting them to do difficult things. But the problem here is that if you teach someone these very powerful skills and they don't care about how they use those skills, that's when you see bad corporate decisions being done.
Yes.
So a good example of this is I used to work in the resources sector, which is drilling for oil, gas, and so on. And I remember once serving as CEO in Latin America. And the problem they had is whenever you mine all the byproduct, which is very dangerous chemicals, you need to put it into a dam. So you got a dam full with dangerous chemicals. And this dam burst. And it had, caused a tremendous disaster. And we were talking about, why did this happen? Why did the engineers not know that the dam walls were not strong enough? And it was a very technical discussion. But at the end of the day, I remember when the CEO and I were talking about it, it's really because the previous leadership just didn't care. We can call it an engineering problem. It was not an engineering problem. At the end of the day, they decided, let's not spend $100 million here, let's put it into our profits. So for me, when I was reading this, I thought, if everyone made decisions like this, and then we put the technical skills on that person, that's the kind of person I'd want to be led by.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. I mean, when you look at the health environment, the mortality due to medical errors is in the US. It's number one, right? It's like the leading cause of death, right? So that's not exactly a good sign for healthcare. So if I just from my own experience and from looking at some data, if I look at the critical incidence reports, then they're all classified, and the solution to critical incidence management is somewhere along the lines of we need a new algorithm, a new policy, a new something, right? Something technical. And fundamentally, what is missing is care. So if we were just asking, would you have made the same mistake if the patient was your mother or your daughter?
That's a great question. I like that.
The answer would be no, right?
Yes.
so or most likely no. I guess we would bring it down to a hundredth of the current number of medical errors if we just looked at care. So I believe most of the medical errors, and that means one of the major cause of mortality, at least in the US, and I guess in many other countries as well, is actually a lack of care.
Yeah.
And that's not, I just want to be clear here, that's not due to the physicians and the nurses or whoever is in contact and is part of this, is a careless person. Not at all. Everybody tries their level best, but we're misled in where we give attention. right? We've
Yes.
gone down so much the quality control kind of route that we've lost contact with our heart wisdom and with our honest care. And if we just give this a little bit more attention, then everybody who really actually cares would have the benefit of putting the heart first and then backing that up with all the great things we've learned at school.
Yeah, it's very practical, because one of the dangers about listening to this podcast is we talk about care, empathy, and they're very touchy-feely subjects. But I remember talking to the CEO of a small American hospital system a few years ago. And they had always had the worst ratings, the worst rankings, the worst customer feedback. And I asked them, what did you do to bring care into your business? Because everyone talks about it. What did you do differently? Because you've done very well, expanded, profitable, highly ranked. But what is the one thing you did? He said, well, the one thing I did is before I took over the hospital group, I told my wife it's going to be a difficult journey for at least 5 years. So why don't we go on a vacation? And he said he took his wife to the Four Seasons in Hawaii. And he watched how they took care of people. And he said that they put the customer first. And when he went back to the hospital, he did very simple things. He just spent days following the life of a customer. And he said, what are the things that are going to irritate customers? Like, why do they have to fill in so many forms when they come in? Why can't some of the forms be pre-filled out for them? We have the information. They just check it and sign it. And then he said, why don't we send them the forms before they come in? And he said, all these little things. He just went through, spent a day in the life. He never stayed in his office. He wanted to experience the pain points, and he fixed it. And this is what care is, right? That's what you're talking about. It's not just touchy-feely. It's about adjusting a system so that you put the customer first.
Yeah, I love it. So there's something I just had a couple of days ago. I had a conversation with a musician.
Yeah.
And I learned the distinction between musicians and instrumentalists.
Oh, there is a distinction. What's the distinction?
And I just love that, right? So you can, like, a musician is somebody who's really kind of living it and appreciating the art and appreciating the really showing up as a full human being with every one of their cells.
Yeah.
And then there's a possibility to be a technical virtuoso.
Yes.
Which can be very fascinating, but it's kind of empty, right?
Yes.
There's something missing. And that's where the authenticity is missing, or that's when the music is really kind of resonating. And the other thing that comes to mind from what you just said is we're using different terms, and maybe it's useful to, I think they're used interchangeably, and maybe it's useful to differentiate a little bit. What do we mean by empathy? What do we mean by mindfulness? What do we mean by compassion? And they're not quite interchangeable.
Yes.
And when I look at the research that's done in this direction, one of the really helpful distinctions here, I think it's mostly rooted in work from Tanja Singer at the Max Planck Institute in Germany. And so one way to look at this is that empathy is a possibility to, or is the ability to resonate. So I can feel what you feel. Okay?
Yes.
So when you cry, I cry. Okay.
Yeah.
So, and there are many situations where that happens. In childhood, this is most unfiltered. In children, we can see this very beautifully, right? But everybody has that kind of capacity to be empathetic. And then there's a way to be sympathetic, which means I can feel with you, right? That doesn't mean that I am identifying with, I'm not feeling your feelings as mine, but I feel your feelings and I recognize they're your feelings.
Yes, yes.
And then there's compassion, and compassion has an intention. It has an intention of feeling for you, right? And that makes such a big difference. This is the CEO who went to Hawaii and to learn about care. So this is somebody who cares for the next job that he's going to start in a bit, right? And in anticipation, he's observing and sees how they're caring for, and then it works. And then you don't get these things that you sometimes get in the restaurant, like was everything all right?
Yes.
And it's empty, right? They don't actually care.
No, they don't care at all. And they actually annoy you a little bit when they ask that question, and you know they don't get it. But I like the way you've distinguished those definitions, because they actually matter. And we do use them interchangeably, but they have very different meanings.
Yes.
Because intent is a very important thing. You can empathize with someone because you just have that character trait and you do it all the time. But compassion is something you can turn on or off. You can decide, okay, this matters to me. I'm going to show compassion here. In this area of life, it's not that important to me. I'm going to pull away from it.
So, Michael, I'm curious. Let me ask you a question here, because you really got me thinking. I love that. So, to me, when I look at 25 years of caring for kids,
that's amazing.
Then there are the stellar moments. When I'm very humbly honest, then the stellar moments are the ones where I was kind of not the one doing something. But I was available for the patient, listening, open, curious, quite often actually starting from a helplessness, where I say, well, I don't really know what to do. I don't have any trickery, algorithms, something that I learned in school here. So I'm really called forth now. And so then I'm really opening up for the patient. And then something kind of magical happens in my ignorance, in my openness, in my curiosity, and from the interaction with the patient. And there's something new emerges that wasn't really seen or understood by the patient before, or myself. And those were usually the moments where I felt really completely fulfilled. They were like the stellar moments. So a little bit embarrassing that you go to school for so long, and the stellar moments are those where you actually didn't contribute based on all the things you've learned, but that's what it is. How is this for you? Like when you look at leadership situations, when you look at business situations, negotiation situations, does that occur where you kind of have an idea and a strategy and you realize there are moments that you haven't prepared for and they're actually the gems?
That's a great question. I think about that a lot, actually, because I think about my career, but I also think about the executives and consultants and bankers I'm now coaching and mentoring. And the answer is that, yes, what you've outlined very well is something that's happened for me. It's also something that happens to clients, but I think there's a deeper nuance here, in the sense that when we are young, we are taught that we must have the answer. We are taught that if you arrive in a meeting, you must be the expert. You must know the answer. And in fact, your self-esteem, your confidence, and so on is built around almost never being someone who can admit you are wrong. Right? You come in there and you have the answers. You must know everything. And you must know everything with absolute certainty as well. I think that's also important. And if you lack certainty, you feel like you failed. But what I found is that when you go into a situation where you are solving something, I wouldn't say solving, I would say exploring a situation with the customer, where you don't know all the answers, he knows you don't know all the answers, he appreciates the part you can contribute to, you know that he can contribute to some things that you cannot bring in, and you co-create it.
Yes.
That's by far always the best thing in the world, because, and I'll tell you why it feels good. It feels good because they're accepting you for your flaws. They're not just there because, well, you went to this school, you gave me the answer, and I expect you to say, you know what, we created something better together when we worked together. And it's that whole journey we went through. And one of the things is I tell all customers and people we mentor and coach now is that that's the kind of level of interaction you want to get to. That's a much more mature level of interaction.
Yes.
And if you can get to that, that's leadership for me. Because not everything is dependent on you. You are not the bottleneck. People are not waiting for you to arrive at 9 a.m. with the answer. No, you are almost like the conductor of an orchestra. You're getting all the pieces to work together. And I always tell people, once you get to that point where you don't think of yourself as an expert, but where you start a conversation, You don't know where it's going to go, but you have the confidence that a good answer is going to come out, even if you were not the main person to bring it out. So the way I tell people, don't be someone who seeks credit for having the best answer, but be someone who seeks credit for getting to the best answer, even if it didn't come from you. You could have just seeded the discussion. You could have started the discussion. For me, if you're at that level now, and you, from your writing, you can see you're at that level, then you're going to do amazing things in the world.
It's really, I so appreciate your words. I really appreciate your experience here. So what it reminds me of is when I take a patient history, then there is a way that we've learned to do this as physicians, right? So there's a way that you kind of, the aim isn't really to serve the patient here. The clearly stated aim is that you arrive at a diagnosis, right?
Yes.
So you basically run down an algorithm. It's like, so every question is like a test, like a lab test. It has a sensitivity and a specificity and a positive predictor. Yeah. So whatever I ask, I'm trying to figure out which diagnosis is it. Right?
Yeah.
So what sounds like an easy conversation actually is quite strategic.
Yeah.
And the patient feels this, right? They're not like, everybody knows whether they're part of some kind of sales funnel, if you like, or they're part of a strategic rundown, or whether this is actually a shared exploration and a true interest. And it completely changes the answer. Like when we started experimenting with this, it's not just that my experience changes. It's not just that the patient is more relaxed, but actually the way, the place from where I'm listening and the intention that I'm listening with changes the answers that I'm getting. I'm kind of sending a different message, even if it's nonverbal, and that is seen and felt, and this builds trust, and people tell me different kind of stories. So it's totally worth it. The credit seeking part in this is really interesting. That's kind of where it gets tough, right? Because then you need to be really humble and open to learn. Because I call this like the beggar in me, right? I recognize I have different personality parts. And one part of me is egotistic, right? It's egocentric, and it wants to be applauded, and it wants to have credit, and it wants to, that's that part, right? That wants that. And to see when this is actually stepping forward on the in the theater, right?
Yes.
When this is kind of claiming the limelight, then that's really humbling and important to recognize. Like when am I acting from a place of being generous and actually curious? And when am I acting from, when is that part active? And when is the other part active that is actually a little bit greedy and wants to have credit? And that's sometimes not so easy to accept. And this is really good when you have a consultant or a coach like yourself to help and to call that out. So for me, this was really important to work with my coach, Arjuna, my co-author. That really helped to start reflecting about things where I have blind spots.
Yeah, that's right. We were talking about credit and so on. One of the difficult things is that if you look at the professions we're in, it tends to attract people that want significance in the world. Bankers, consultants, doctors, lawyers. These are people that are very determined. They've worked really hard. They tend to want to be in the center of the action. But the danger is always, what if the recommendation for a patient or a client doesn't have to be exciting? I've got investment banking clients whereby I always have to caution them. Is this the deal you want to do? Or is this the deal that's best for the client?
Yeah.
I've got clients who will come in and tell me, Michael, this is going to be the deal of my career. How do I do it? And I say, well, yes, but does the customer need this deal? Because if you're doing it for yourself, then you're driven by significance. And that's a very dangerous trait.
Love it. Yes. Wow, I'm just reminded by this conversation reminds me of 2 years ago when we had a first summit in San Francisco. Somebody who actually also came from the kind of financial world. I said, if I look at the logo of heart-based medicine, then I kind of draw a line underneath heart-based, and then just imagine the medicine is like on a swivel, and you go like consulting, hotel, gastronomy, flight, travel.
You're already seeing a business empire.
No, but the idea is like, this is such a fundamental principle that kind of, if we ask the question, what if?
Yes.
So what if we actually start acting from a place of true care?
Yes.
What if we dare to do that? And it may look insecure, it may look less controllable, but at the end, we're actually serving a much bigger purpose. If we're ready to dare that, to take that risk, then that's actually a common principle that applies to different industries. And I just, by the conversation with you, I love the idea that we actually get together with people from different industries and we compare notes and see, like, where are the parallels and where are the fundamentals and where can we kind of learn from each other from other arenas. So I love the idea that you read Dare to Care, like the letters to my goddaughter, and you see it as a leadership.
Oh, definitely. And it's example you were telling me about the discussion with the finance guy. He's really asking the question, what business are you in? Because you see yourself as a medical business. But you may not be a medical business. You may be a care-based organization that is currently operating in the medical field. And you can take the same principles to hospitality, the same way the CEO I mentioned before took the Four Seasons principles and brought it into medicine. So Four Seasons is their core business is taking care of people, care. And they just happen to be in the hospital space. But if they took those principles to other industries, can you imagine the effect it would have? Can you imagine flying on an airline that was run like the Four Seasons? I would fly on that airline.
Yeah, for sure.
So everything you're saying makes a lot of sense, but it all comes back down to this set of principles that you outlined to your goddaughter. And they're so powerful, they can go across sectors, across industries. I can see them being applied in banking, into management consulting, the industry. So it's a good reference point, but I like to say filters for making decisions. Because often what happens is that when I talk to clients, they always get frustrated when they're making a decision. But then I tell them the reason you're frustrated is because you don't have a way of making a decision. So your brain fries out. But if you had a set of operating principles that you apply to every decision, then you wouldn't get worried because you know, okay, if you make this decision, these are the principles, do these breach my principles? So when I was reading the letters, I looked at it in that way. You're not telling your goddaughter what to do, but you're almost telling her, these are the implications. So think about this, consider this. You know, when I was reading it, a few words came to mind for me. The first one is appreciation. Yeah. You have to appreciate things, right? You know, appreciation, if you don't appreciate things, life is going to be very sad for you. Yes. There's going to be no joy. You always find a reason to not enjoy now because you think joy is something you get. Joy is not something you get. Joy is something you give. You give joy to a moment, right? You don't go to a moment and you get joy from it because everyone has different experiences. The other thing I liked about the way he wrote the letters is there's a clear lack of judgment there. There's no judgment. There's no part of it where you're judging someone. And I think that's a key one. So the third word is expectations. Oftentimes, when we are sad or upset or crying about something, it's only because what happened didn't meet our expectations, if you think about it, right? Like, why did this lady leave me after 10 years of marriage? Because she found something better, right? You expected it to last forever. It didn't meet your expectation, but why don't you appreciate the fact that she gave you 10 years? And most people don't even get 10 years, right? So when I was reading the book, 3 words, expectation, came up, jumped out, no judgments, appreciation. Those are 3 words that were very capture the way you were writing. And I really resonated with me because I think that's the way you got to think about leadership as well. Because if you don't think that way, how do you bring that to your people? It's very hard to do that. Yeah, wow, thank you. Thank you. That's beautiful to hear. And what do you think about, I'll definitely, I need to read the book again with a different mindset. So, what do you think about, so one word that is also kind of very high up on that list that could be part of this group is forgiveness. Yeah, I think that's very important. I think that, I deal with a lot of clients, powerful people, right? And I can tell you right now that for all of them, all of the issues stem from childhood.
Hmm.
And this is for everyone in the world. If you really think about it deeply, something happened to you when you were a child,
Hmm.
which became a reference point for everything else. Even if you think about food, why do you like certain food? Because when you were young, there was a memory attached to that food, right? That's why you like it. So what happens with a lot of people, and for everyone from what I've seen, is that something happens when they are a child. They then use that lesson to make decisions when they're a young adult. But what they fail to understand is a child is just a child. You have no way of reasoning what happened. So any rules you create when you were a child are bound to set you up for failure because you were a child. So they experience something, they get into adulthood, and they use these rules. And it doesn't work because you were a child creating rules. And then they punish themselves. Everyone I've ever spoken to, no matter how much money they have, no matter how successful they are, fundamentally, they just want to be seen and appreciated. And when they don't get it, they first think it's their fault. And they don't forgive themselves. So when you talk about forgiveness, I was thinking about forgiving yourself first.
Yes.
If you can't forgive yourself, how are you going to forgive others? Because you know yourself better, right? So whenever I deal with executives, and I also have some surgeons and so on we work with, and they're so hard on themselves, and I say, look, if you're so hard on yourself, you're not going to appreciate the lessons you get in life. So let's just say something bad happening now, when you're at a time when you can deal with it, when you have the financial resources to manage it, is far better than later. So you got to appreciate the lessons there. You can see it as something bad, or you can just call it a lesson and move on. But this thing about forgiving yourself is an important one. And when we deal with people, we find that most of the stress and tension in their life is because they can't move on. They're just stuck in punishing themselves repeatedly and repeatedly. And it then manifests itself in decisions they take. If you believe that you deserve to be punished, what kind of life are you going to have? You're going to say, well, this is normal. I'm suffering in my career, but it's normal for me. I deserve it. So that foundational operating system is very important. You've got to accept you made some bad mistakes, forgive yourself, move on. And I would say that one of the best things I've seen people do is journal and document your mistakes. Because, wow, you don't want to make that mistake again. And let me tell you, if you made a mistake somewhere in the world, there's a million people about to make those mistakes. And they would appreciate reading about what you went through. So forgiveness is a big one, and not many people talk about it. And see, this is why I think your book is about leadership, because true leadership is about understanding who you are. That's true leadership. You can't lead until you understand who you are. Because you can only surround yourself by the people you need if you know what you don't have. So when you're building a team, you've got to start with saying, who am I as a person? What drives me? What are my key drivers in life? What balance do I need? If I cannot forgive myself, how am I going to forgive my team members? Why would I surround myself with good people and deliberately punish them because I've never learned how to forgive myself? And I think that's leadership, right? It's a very empathy-based leadership. Your book teaches all of that. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what happens with your goddaughter and her career. I'm going to be following.
We'll follow up.
So you can see how it is about leadership. I mean, you can cut it any ways you want, but it is definitely about leadership. It's maybe the most central part of leadership. Know yourself, care for others, and all good things will happen.
I love what you're saying. And I wonder what you think about this. So when we say know yourself, to me, there's kind of two levels of self, if you like. So one is, I call this like the little me. And the little me is the one with concerns, and it has kind of different aspects of its personality, and it has, courageous and afraid parts, and it has, more the manager and more the creative part, and it has all the different polarities that make up my personality mix, right? And all of these parts have kind of interests and wishes and desires and competences and all of that. That's sort of the little me. And then there's a sense of self that is looking at these parts, that is aware of these parts. And this awareness that is aware of the little me is like a a bigger me or something, a wider me.
Yes.
And this actually is the place where I feel authentic resonance with
Yeah.
other people, whether this is a patient or a friend or my wife or my children or whoever, a team member. That's, or a plant or an animal for that reason, right? Or a
Yes.
beautiful sunset or something, right? Where there isn't the truly felt joy, the truly felt aliveness.
Yes.
That is not so much felt from the little me, but more from an awareness that is aware
Yes.
of these little roles that I play, right?
Yeah.
So what might be a way to bring this into leadership, or what might be a way to bring this into, let me ask you, as a leadership coach, what would you see, what could be a way to bring this into the medical world? So could this be, do we have to start at school? As you said, hey, it starts
Yeah.
in childhood. Is this where we need to start? And what do we do with those that are already on the journey and realizing there's something missing? I'm looking for something and I can't quite pinpoint it.
That's a great question. I love it. I like the way you framed it. Very eloquent, the little me, the big me. It's a good language because the language you choose obviously determines the way you think about things, right? If you use negative language, it's negative thoughts. When you talk about a little me, it's a great choice of words because a little person needs to be protected, right? Can you imagine what would happen in your life if the little me was in turmoil?
Mhm.
Right? It just wouldn't work. So when you talk about little me, the way I think about it is I call it identity.
Yeah.
So who are you as a person truly?
Mhm.
And the interesting thing here is you talk about little me and the big me, there has to be congruence because
Mhm.
everything you do in life, what I've noticed with people is when they start off their life, they either don't know their identity or they're told to pursue a life for a number of reasons, whether it's peer pressure and so on, that is not their identity.
Mhm.
A simple example of this is someone who's painfully introverted,
Mhm.
but at the office, they have to take a speaking role. Now, what do you think that person does on a Saturday or Sunday?
Mhm.
They will go home and hide from everyone.
Mhm.
So what they do here is that the way I see it is the big me is your interaction with the world. The little me is your identity. The most important thing I've seen with clients is that everything in your life is a battle to get back to your identity. And your identity will win. So maybe you can push out your identity for 10 years, for 20 years. But people say, well, I have a midlife crisis. Really, what's happening is they are shifting back to their identity.
Mhm.
They've built a life that's not supporting their identity. They thought they can do it for a very long time.
Mhm.
And then when they get to 45, 55, they say, you know what, I'm not happy. But why are you not happy? Your life is, you built your life. Well, it's a life you didn't really want. So when you talk about teaching people, I actually thought about this a lot. And I always said that the way I'd raise children is I'd raise it on I think it's the Nordic model. But basically, I love this, whereby I read in a newspaper somewhere that when children in, I think it's Norway, when they're young, they are not told or not pushed into figuring out who's winning in a soccer match.
Mhm.
Until I think 14 years or so on, you need to enjoy. You need to enjoy the game, learn to like it. You must be doing it because you're enjoying it, and only later competition is brought in. The reason I'm mentioning this is because when you talk about how do we teach this at a young age, I think the first thing, what's important is people need to know what their identity is.
Mhm.
And I feel we force it out of people.
Mhm.
When you go to an MBA program, they all want you to be aggressive.
Yes.
But not everyone's aggressive. So what happens is people pretend to be aggressive. They take aggressive roles. I'll give you a really good example of this. Right? I once had recently actually had a client in investment banking. And this lady just came from management consulting. And she was a good management consultant. Very sweet lady. I'm sure that she had a godfather like you that raised her well. And then she went into investment banking and it was really tough for her.
Mhm.
And she was telling me that clients are very difficult. And she wants me to teach her how to speak to them so that she can control them. And I asked her, well, I can teach you this, but are you going to be happy with the person you will become once you learn how to talk to them?
Sweetness.
Because if that's not your identity, you're going to do it for 5, 10 years, and then you're going to feel hollowed out afterwards. So for me, if we can teach people at a young age to know who they are, be confident about who they are, don't feel embarrassed about it, make choices that speak to identity, I think that'll be amazing. Do you know how many kids today go to university when they shouldn't go to university? They should go to a vocational college and learn a technical skill. They go there, they fail, they suffer from confidence problems, they think they're a failure, but they're not a failure. They shouldn't have been in university in the first place, right? That's just a deviation from your identity. So this identity thing and about knowing your little self and protecting it and having congruency with the world is everything. If you don't do that, your life eventually collapses, becomes painful. So I always tell people, you got to know your identity. Don't be embarrassed if you are this person. This is who you are. Someone's going to love you for it. You're going to get a job. You're going to have a meaningful life, but it's a sustainable life. And most people, they don't know their identity. I think with the letters to your goddaughter, in a sense, you're helping her identify her identity. Who is she as a person? What are the choices she's going to make that's going to make her happy? And if she keeps making choices that make her happy, how is she ever going to fail, right? And that's how I think about leadership. That's how I coach people about leadership. It always comes down to who you are. You are a unique individual that needs certain things. You build your world around you in that way, and it's a win-win situation. So you're always going to protect the little you because that's like the kernel, that's everything there. And when it resonates with the rest of the world and it's congruent, I use the word congruent, then you'll be happy. And it's surprising, I meet clients from all over the world, and it's always the same problems for them. They don't know their identity. They're making these massive decisions. They're getting married to someone who doesn't support their identity. How well do you think that's going to end? That's not going to end well.
Yeah. Wow. That's profound what you're saying. And so when we look at what is it that really creates moments of fulfillment for our clients and for ourselves, these are moments of connection, and they're not moments of getting it my way.
Yes, exactly.
Like the ideas of getting it my way, and whether this is like I am more happy with a Mercedes Benz, right? Or I am more happy with something where it's a thing, then that's usually quite short lasting. And very soon it's going to be a different thing to keep up the hope for happiness. And the same thing is for having it my way, or I've sealed the deal the way I had to, right? Or something like this.
Absolutely.
I've managed the patient exactly according to protocol and algorithm or something like that. So there is a bit of satisfaction in that, but it's actually very superficial.
Yes.
So the really deep satisfaction, the really deep fulfillment, a really deep sense of feeling alive and having spent a life, a day worth living, they come from moments of, at least for me, they come from moments where I feel part of a bigger connection.
Yes.
Where it's not about whether I get it my way or somebody gets it their way, or it's kind of the football game situation, like who scores how many points. But it's actually about, did we accomplish something together? Did we really live up to our values?
Yeah, I like that. That's right. I always think about it that we make choices to interact with people. Right? We decide we're going to interact with this person, we're not going to interact with this person. It's a choice. So if we chose to interact with this person, why don't we make it the best interaction possible? Yeah, I always think about this. You can't delight customers until you know their identity.
Yeah.
You can't delight them. And one of the things I do when we do coaching is I always tell people that I would like you to spend a week alone. Because what happens to a lot of people is that they put distractions into their life to hide from themselves. They don't like who they are. But if you can spend a week alone by yourself, I mean, really alone, maybe read a book or something, but no babies, no distraction, you will find out who you are. And that's a very powerful thing, because I recently had a situation where a client wanted to have a baby, and we're talking about this, and And we realized that actually she's looking for a distraction. She wants to be busy. And I was telling you, if there's no joy in your life now, how will a baby give you joy? It's not going to give you joy. It's going to make you happy for a minute, but joy is something you give. It's not something you get from the world. So a very good test I tell people to spend a week alone. You'll be shocked at what you learn about yourself. The things that you don't want to think about, you're going to think about. The things, because a lot of people, they are busy to avoid certain thoughts. But, avoiding thoughts is like a pain in your shoulder. It's telling you there's something there. Don't avoid it. Lean into it and figure out what's there, right? It's not going to go away unless you deal with it. So yeah, that's why I said that all your work is leadership. I mean, it's pure leadership. I don't see it anywhere else. It's really one of the best leadership books I've actually read in many years.
Oh, cool. Yeah, so it's about a self-exploration, right? It's a curiosity about ourselves and about our environment. And I love the idea where, your suggestion to actually, take a week and see what happens, is there's one thing I really enjoy every day is to start the day with an intentional time of doing nothing. So that's my little, that's my little week away every day.
Yes.
Right. And then what happens typically when I just sit doing nothing, like you can actually do nothing doing. It's also a possibility. It's like, okay, Zen meditation, like now I'm doing empty mind, right? Or something like this, right?
No, I know exactly what you mean. I mean, just what you're saying is just sit there and do nothing.
Yeah, exactly. Just sit and watch what happens, right? Just observe the theater, right? And then you see thoughts coming in and you see stuff happening and emotions coming up and body sensations and you're hearing things, seeing things, whatever. And they're just noticed and they're just labeled, and otherwise there's nothing else happening, right? I'm not pursuing any of those impressions. I'm not going with any of those thoughts. I just see them coming in and going out.
Yes.
And just to see how difficult that is.
It's hard.
It's very humbling. And at the same time, doing this every day, even if it's just for a few minutes, that's actually very healing. That's actually very helpful. And sometimes what follows from me there is listening. So it's kind of setting the tone for the day. And if I don't set the tone for the day, like intentionally, like this is what I want the day to be, and I'm already in control mode, then actually like, oh, this is going to be a good day, right? This is already, actually I already lost it.
So that's right.
To really listen to, what's the mood of the day? What might this day actually bring, right? This is opening up, and this is actually
intentional.
Yeah, it's intentional curiosity that is somehow, it creates a superficial insecurity, because it may be that I feel sad today, or it may be that some grunge is coming up, or something that I don't want to be because I want it to be a positive day, right? So then there's a possibility to just listen and see what it's like, and to appreciate that. This is where appreciation comes in.
It's a simple thing. People don't do it enough. And I like that exercise that you recommend, just sitting and doing that. And I'm going to try that. I think it'll be, it's because not everyone has a week to take off, right? But you can take a little bit of the morning off. That can be a routine.
Taking off a week is phenomenal, absolutely. And to really be alone, and particularly then not being, in TV and distraction mode and laptop and iPhone and whatever. So like there's a week alone means really like, ideally it's out there in nature with nothing available and no connectivity. So you're kind of really you really recognize what distraction storm we're running otherwise.
Yes.
So that makes it very clear. And as you say, if you just take a few minutes every day, it actually makes a huge difference. And we can bring it into the day. So one way for me to bring it into the day is to do very simple breathing techniques in the morning.
Yes.
That allow me to, if you like, connect heart and brain. and see that I create what the heart math people would call coherence, or an alignment, where I'm basically not allowing Sir Busy
Yes.
to be in control, but actually it has to be serving the heart intelligence. Then that is something that can be rooted in breath work. And if I do this, for a few months every morning, just a few minutes, it means that during the day, doing the same breathing exercise, if it's just for 2 or 3 breaths, it takes like 5 seconds,
Yes.
has an incredibly resetting effect. So to me, this is one of the most powerful ways to rebalance, to recenter, is to kind of, practice the breathing in my morning gym, if you like,
Yeah.
in my practice ground, so that when I'm out there, then there's a way to kind of find reset points, and to just check in with myself and see, like, am I on track here? Did I get lost again? Like, oh,
Yes.
yeah, I got lost again. Okay, come back to center. So that's
Well, that's true. Most people don't have check-in points.
yeah,
They go through the day and they let the environment hijack their state.
yeah.
But you have to have check-in points. They wait, hold on a second. Am I doing this right? Is this what I want to feel? Is this how I want to react? And almost always the answer is no, because once you get caught into the flow of things, it's bad. I mean, the one about taking time in the morning is very important, because if you check your emails and then you set your day based on what someone sent you the night before, you're basically letting someone hijack your day. And you must never do that, because then you'll never get anything done. Jan, thank you so much. That was one of the best podcasts we've done. I think this is going to be so useful for our listeners. I really enjoyed your book. I enjoyed speaking to you. I'm sure we'll be in touch and chat more and maybe get you on the show again. But it was an amazing conversation. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much, Michael. Really appreciate the conversation with you. Likewise, and I'd love to continue the conversation. I have a lot of questions for you.
Fantastic. I'll get the team to send you my contact details so we can keep chatting afterwards.
Lovely. Thank you so much. Really
Take
appreciate
care.
the time. Thank you.
And give my regards to your family.
And you. Bye-bye. Thank you.